Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast sponsored by ThinkVine, entitled Why Agent-Based Modeling is Disrupting Marketing Mix. We here at the AMA provide you with this webcast as one of the many special programs offered to the marketing community, and we invite you to participate in this ongoing series of free web seminars to help you drive the greatest return on your marketing investment. You can join us every week for these informative thought leader webcasts that do feature some of the most expert minds in marketing, and you can see a full list of upcoming webcasts if you go to ama.org/webcast. And before starting today, just a few housekeeping items to go through. We will be recording the full presentation, and it will be made available to you very soon after the live presentation, so look for that coming your way. If you're able to join us on Twitter, please do so. The hashtag for today's webcast is currently on your screen, hashtag ABMWebcast. So please engage with the other participants and share your learnings and thoughts on today's webcast. And if you have any questions as the presentation goes on, please use the chat feature that you see to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area as well. We will address those immediately upon receipt. And any content-related questions you might have, we do encourage you to enter as the presentation does go on, and we will address those at the end of the formal presentation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. We're being joined by Mark Battaglia, who is the CEO of ThinkVine. And Mark is a proven business leader with over 20 years of experience at discovering and capitalizing on marketing opportunities. He's got a lot of great information that he's going to be sharing with you today. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mark to start today's presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. I'm really happy to have the chance to talk about agent-based modeling today. ThinkVine, the company that I'm with, helps B2C marketers get better results from their marketing dollars. We are a rapidly growing business with over 60+ customers across industries, and we do use agent-based modeling as the approach that we take to help marketers get those better results. Agent-based modeling is a technique that's been used in the hard sciences since the 1950s, but it's only recently been applied to marketing. And so people often ask us, what is agent-based modeling? What can it do in marketing? How is it different than things that have been done before? And so the purpose of today's time is to go in a kind of rapid-fire, non-technical way through some of the important concepts, and just to give you exposure to those concepts, to get you thinking, and then from there, if you want to learn more, you can and get more technical information. We're happy to support you in that way. But today we're going to go pretty quickly through the high level and really just focus on the concepts and why agent-based modeling is so important and why it's being accepted by so many marketers. So just want to start by orienting everybody to the space, and just in case you're not familiar with the topic, marketing mix modeling is I guess I would call it a generic term. It's used for the activity that we're going to talk about today, and it's really, we'll talk about the questions and answers in a minute. But there are multiple ways that you can do marketing mix modeling, and we'll cover the agent-based focus on that. We'll touch a little bit on regression or econometric methods, which is the way people have traditionally done marketing mix modeling in the past. But more important than talking about what it is, I think let's take some time to talk about the business questions that marketing mix answers. Marketing mix is really focused at the strategy and planning level. The business questions that we're answering are the types that you see on this screen. They're the kind of questions that the CMO or the VP of marketing or media planning or digital or the brand managers might ask. These are different sorts of questions than the ones that typically get answered in a big data contest. There people are looking at things like A/B testing to determine which digital ad works better than another, what next best offer to present to someone, listening on social media, and other sort of campaign and tactical level concerns. So that's one of the distinctions I want to make clear to people is the focus of media mix modeling is on these higher, marketing mix modeling is on these higher level questions, and they're really, what's interesting, I guess, from the perspective of our customers is they really see that having good answers, using data, being objective, having good answers to these sorts of questions can really move the dial much more for them than the improvement at more of a tactical level. Why is, next question we get is, why should I be looking at doing something differently in terms of how I get answers to those questions today? And I think that this slide is an attempt to summarize what we hear from people. ThinkVine was founded by a guy named Damon Ragusa. Damon was a marketing consultant who worked with large organizations and did marketing mix as well as other important research work for them, so segmentation studies, pricing studies, and so on. And Damon ran a consulting business that did that type of work. And he found that the world was changing in the kind of ways that are outlined on this slide, that these things not only make marketers' jobs harder, but they also make it tougher for the techniques that have been used in the past to be as accurate and as useful and as valuable to marketers today. So Damon's approach was really to say, let's look at the world and let's see, is what people are doing working, and is there a better way if it's not? I can't roll back the clock to 5 years ago and know the data that Damon looked at that time, but I can show you this information, which is a study that ThinkVine recently did. We looked at the marketing budgets of many of the large brands that we work with, and we compared the budget that they had in place to the one that was later optimized using ThinkVine software. And what we found is that on a line item basis, and by line item I mean sort of the big buckets, print, TV, radio, search, etc., even at those high levels, the budgets were not very well optimized. In fact, 85% of the budgets were not at the number that at the beginning, were not at the number they ended up at. And what we found is that by optimizing these line item budgets, marketers were able to get a 28% improvement in the results they got from their marketing. So things aren't, even today where people are doing lots of really smart things with big data, and especially on the digital side of things, there's still a lot of room for improvement in the results that marketers get from their dollars. Before we talk about agent-based modeling, I think we need to take just a quick look back at how marketing mix has been done historically. And I'm going to use the term regression, but people use other names. People talk about econometric modeling, or they talk about deterministic statistics. Regardless of the term you use, that set of things is really a toolbox, and there are multiple types of regression, and so I'm going to have to generalize a little bit, but just to quickly review, the sophistication of marketing mix done in a traditional way varies by which statistical techniques are chosen, the data that people are able to assemble, and the skill of the individual modeler doing the work. And so what's on this slide here is, and on the next one, which I'll flip to in a second, are really talking at a high level, and again, trying to just give you a quick overview before we get into the meat of today's presentation. Because marketing mix has been used, is applied like agent-based modeling, it started in a different field and then was applied to marketing. As people have used it and as the marketplace have changed, there have been some issues that are really caused a lot by the sorts of changes that I outlined earlier. And I've summarized the ones that we typically hear from our customers. On the previous slide I talked about how marketing mix extends, connects or models what's happened in the past and then extends that relationship to the future. there was a lot of time when that worked really well. If you think about sort of the Mad Men era of marketing, when America, just using one example, was pretty similar from year to year, when the number of choices available to marketers were pretty limited, just a few major networks and so on. Regression worked in well enough for a lot of companies to use it and to rely on it. But it really does take that sort of very top-down approach. And today, with all the choices available to marketers, especially in the online world, marketers really want to get more granular information, and specifically to get information about how to target their marketing and use a variety of marketing methods to reach various consumer groups. Also, one of the issues with regression that really matters for us today is that historically, when you build a regression model and it's based on what you've done in the past, if you want to try something new, as many marketers are trying something new, you really don't have a basis in the model to forecast that. And so there's either additional work or work out to the side in order to be able to see, well, I'm going to try something new. Do I think that'll work for me? And then you can see some of the other things here. I won't go through all of them in the interest of time. I will say that many people, again, there's different types of regression, and some of the different types of regression can address some of the issues that I've laid out, but I do want to say that there is no one type of regression that addresses all the different sorts of technical issues that are gaps between how marketers need to work today and how what you can get from a regression-oriented model. Agent-based modeling is in the end a different approach. If you go back to the story I was telling you about Damon, he started the company in roughly 2001, and then sort of fast forward to 5 years ago when he was looking for a way to do marketing mix in a way that better fits and mirrors today's world. And he chose ABM as he looked around across methods because it's different in some really important ways. And the rest of this presentation is really about enumerating those ways. So again, so you can hear those and then make a choice about whether you'd like to get more information about it. So we started with a definition of marketing mix. I wanted to take a moment and define agent-based modeling in sort of a generic across all its uses way. So this definition describes ABM in that way. It's a proven way of combining data, business rules, and analytics to recreate, gain insight into, and predict complex phenomena by simulating the behavior and interactions of agents. So again, kind of that's generic, it's good, but let's connect it more to marketing. In marketing, the complex phenomena that is being predicted and gained insight to and all those sorts of good things is how marketers respond to your marketing, including whether they buy or don't buy your products. And each agent, remember at the end it was the behavior and the interaction of agents, the agents in an agent-based model are consumers, either at a personal level or a household level. So the next question we often get from customers is, okay, I get, at a high level, is this kind of like regression? Is this completely different? What is it? And I think it's really important to start by saying, in some ways, agent-based modeling and regression are very similar. We're each approaching the same goal. We're trying to understand how marketers we can help marketers understand how to better use the funds that they've been allocated. We do start, agent-based modeling and regression both start by looking at the historical results and helping people understand what has and hasn't worked. And they can look not only at media, but they can look at other factors like pricing and distribution and other elements that are important to marketers. In both cases, when you're setting up a marketing mix model, whether you're doing regression or agent-based, it's a combination of sort of straight, powerful math on your data and diagnostic tests about how well what you've done fits. And so there is analyst judgment on both regression and on agent-based modeling that enable the analyst to really fit the model to the needs of that particular company or brand. Both cases can incorporate external factors like the weather and the economy into the equation, because those things are often really important in the rhythm and the timing of results in businesses. And finally, both of them do a really good job at looking back at and saying historically what's happened, although in different levels of detail. So now we kind of want to be done talking about regression and do a better job fulfilling the promise of what we said we'd cover today. And so now I want to talk about exclusively agent-based modeling from here out. Agent-based, if you look at those first two comments there, each company's agent-based model is different, and each uses different data, different marketing science, different calculations, etc. That's really important to know, and it's kind of parallel to saying if someone is doing statistical work, they might use a variety of different techniques and use them in different ways, and so on. So the differences between each framework in the agent-based modeling world or each set of techniques used in a regression world really do matter. And for the rest of this presentation, just to make sure that I'm giving you accurate information, I'm going to be talking about agent-based modeling, but I'm going to be using the specifics of what ThinkVine does because I understand those the best. So the first thing to talk about relative to what makes agent-based modeling really interesting and valuable to people is that agent-based modeling starts with a model of the marketplace. If you think about a marketplace, there are many factors at work. There's the consumers, there's the competition, there's substitutes for your product, there's halo effects from other brands, etc. And agent-based modeling really creates a complete picture of that. If you've ever played the game SimCity, you know how there's a computer-based world where you're able to make decisions about plans and so forth. You're able to test those against the simulated world and then see the outcomes of those relative to, in that case, how much your town thrives or doesn't thrive and so on. Agent-based modeling, the way ThinkVine does it, is really similar. It's like SimCity for CMOs. We've created a marketplace online that you can test your marketing plans against, and you can see the results that come out in terms of all the different variables that are of interest to you. So without getting technical, because I promised this wouldn't be a technical presentation, I will say that the activities and the outcomes that come from testing your plan against the marketplace involve literally billions of probability-based calculations. And the probabilities are things like how likely is a certain type of person to see your ad, how likely is that person to make a decision based on price once they've reached the store, or how often really is the person likely to go to the store versus, for example, buying online. So all those things are included in the underlying math and the calculations. We won't get into the details of that, but I would say if you're interested in that, we're happy to fill you in more about how things work under the covers. When we talk with a customer and they're looking at using an agent-based modeling approach, the first thing that we start with is saying, well, how are you measuring the success of your marketing? How do you keep score? If you think about this in kind of a regression world or a classic world, you might say that we're asking what is the dependent variable that you want the model to solve for. That's not a perfect analogy because agent-based modeling is able to give lots of different outcomes along the way, and you can learn some important things about intermediate measures. But it is a great way to kind of get in the ballpark of thinking about it. And so most customers are going to say, well, we want to predict sales. That might be sales in dollars, or it might be sales in volume of units, or some other measure. But we also are able to work with people who have different important metrics from their marketing. So in some cases, they're focusing on leads. We've worked with schools that are focused on enrollments, and it really is an important thing to say that agent-based modeling enables you to select, to establish a marketplace that outputs results in ways that align with the way you want to keep score for your business. I talked at, the first difference I mentioned was about the marketplace and how the ThinkVine software really recreates that. Within the marketplace, the most important difference between agent-based modeling and other approaches is that it really is consumer-oriented. They're in the marketplace. We are representing the population of people that are relevant for the business in terms of their category. And so in most typical cases, we're working with large organizations who want to know about their effect across the country. They may have interest in specific states or regions or whatever. But in that case, we would be modeling the consumers and the proper demographics and associated variables for all of them, and then also associating those demographic variables with how those consumers consume media and how they purchase products within a category. So a really big difference is if you think about a regression equation, that's really doing a great job of aligning your marketing spend, your historical marketing spend, with the sales outcome or the volume outcome. But there are no consumers, and really the consumer behavior and affecting that consumer behavior is critically important to marketers. That's really the job that we're focused on. Another thing I want to highlight in terms of what's possible with agent-based modeling is that agent-based modeling represents all of the marketing that you're doing. So it's not just the media. Oftentimes, historically, companies have engaged, typically their agencies or a consulting group, to focus on media mix modeling, and so just the media portion. And what happens, I think, with that is that you get a partial picture of how your marketing works. It's not as valuable to you as understanding all that can happen in the marketplace. So if you think about companies, for example, in consumer packaged goods and retail and so on, in addition to the media, they have pricing concerns. They have distribution channels that they might be working through. They have oftentimes significant trade promotion budgets. There's the effect of their competition and so on. So compared to media mix modeling, agent-based modeling is truly doing marketing mix modeling, and that's a broader, more multidimensional view, and that makes it more valuable and interesting to people. I mentioned consumers earlier. Consumers are becoming more diverse along practically every dimension that you can think of. There are important differences in consumer behavior along demographic lines, along income lines, and so forth. Because agent-based modeling is really modeling consumer behavior, it enables marketers to understand those differences and in the terms of how those differences affect results, and that understanding enables marketers to change their behavior in ways that are likely to affect results. For example, if you want to launch a new multicultural campaign, or if you want to reach a different demographic, you really need to understand how will the changes that I'm making affect not only my overall results, but my results within that group. Agent-based modeling is really cool. I think one of the really cool things about it is you can not only say, well, how would I reach that group, but you can use it in the drilling down of results to be able to say, is there a group that I'm not reaching effectively now, and can I change my marketing to reach a different group, maybe one that I haven't targeted, I've only reached with my mass marketing before, and if I do that, will I be able to improve my overall results? As mentioned earlier, both regression and agent-based modeling look back, and we understand we provide information on what has worked historically in the past. But the reality is that you can only change the future. And as a marketer, typically when you get only historical, backward-looking type information, you have to make sort of a leap of faith to say, well, I'm going to make a series of changes that are going to be based on what I've learned, but I'm also making some guesses about how the future will be different. And so it's a big advantage to be able to use the software to help you in that and to look ahead and to do so in a highly quantified way. And so let me give you two specific examples of the difference, because maybe that's not totally clear. One example would be that if you think about how our population here in the U.S. is changing along variety of ethnic lines, you might want to be able to say, well, let me think about the trends of what's happening there. Let me look out in a longer term and maybe reach a different sort of consumer and be able to do that with more quantified, more objective information. And then secondly, there's the idea of trying a new tactic. If I want to say, for example, if I haven't been doing mobile marketing, but I want to do that going forward, in the simulation, the agents have been checking their mobile phones and you just haven't had an ad there. And so when your ad appears, you're able to test something that you never tried before. And that's really a great advantage over traditional approaches. In regression, when marketers are modeling ROI, they're really focusing on looking back and understanding what has and hasn't worked. And the models that are built based on assumptions around the interactions that have happened in the past. So modelers rather, use things like interaction terms and dummy variables and so forth, and able to create a fit that works really well. In agent-based modeling, all of the calculations or all the interactions are included every time. So every time that agent-based modeling runs a simulation and creates a forecast, agent-based modeling considers all of the interactions, and that really enables you to get really full attribution across all of your historical and even across all of your forecasted marketing. And so if you're coming from the digital space, and attribution is a term that's really frequently used there, what ABM is doing is full fractional attribution. So everything is considered and everything is given its proper credit in the context of establishing ROI. Another important element of agent-based modeling is that it's time-based. So what happens in the past explicitly affects the future. In terms of ROI, that means you can look at ROI within a current year, but you can also look, for example, if you ran a campaign in, say, November or December of a calendar year, how that campaign can affect next year's sales. And then the third type of ROI that you can do is you can look at ROI of a particular tactic for a particular group, for example, and you can take out things like seasonality and other external factors so you can really compare across tactics on an apples-to-apples basis. The granularity of information is something that marketers talk to us about all the time because, of course, the decisions that you're making once you've set your budget are often about rearranging your funds or making choices about how you spend your funds on a very tactical level or more, or at least a campaign level. And so the ability to get granular information is a combination of both the approach and the software that you use. What ability does the software give you to drill down into the various groups, for example, to see by tactic, by channel, by demographic, by geography, and to enable you to really get an understanding at a level that you execute or the agency executes for you on your marketing plans. And so what ThinkVine does as part of our setup is we use a lot of agents. We typically would use somewhere around 50,000 agents to create a really representative population, and then the software enables you to drill down and look on all those different multidimensional views. One of the topics that's super hot in the marketing world, and I've just been to a couple conferences where there's been lots of discussion about it, is the idea of agile marketing or agile marketing planning. And I think the progression to think about here is that marketers for a long time did annual planning and budgeting, and that was really based on the cadence of television and upfront buys and print and upfront buys and so on. But over time, as the world has become more agile, there's more technology enabling marketers, most companies are shifting to quarterly or monthly adjustments across all of their marketing, including the offline marketing. And then within the digital side of things, they're on a planning basis looking at weekly and daily decisions as well as executing things on a real-time basis. So without a doubt, that you've probably all heard the saying, software is eating the world. Well, software really has to come to bear in the planning side of things. And so one of the approaches, or one of the important things about agent-based modeling is that it's very well suited to bring planning to into an agile marketing world, and particularly it can be well suited to that depending on the software and how that's established. How that manifests itself in real life is, for a marketer, is the ability to do what if whenever he or she wants to do it. So if you think about the real life world where sometimes crises occur, where the CFO comes down the hall and says, sorry, things aren't going the way we thought. We're going to have to make an adjustment to the marketing budget. And a marketer is able to use the software, any marketer at any time, and to say, well, what if we change this? What if we try this new idea, etc. And so this is really the software, the ability to take an agent-based model and to put forward a user interface that marketers can use in the sort of language that we all speak is critically important, and part of one of the reasons that agent-based modeling is being accepted by more and more companies. We talked a little bit about attribution already, and attribution, I guess, for those of you who maybe aren't from the digital space, is really about assigning the right credit to every marketing activity. And so there are a variety of methods people use. They use, for example, last click, which is the last thing I touched before I purchased or did whatever else is being tracked, and that's kind of a discredited method. There's weighting that was used that was kind of discredited a little bit as being arbitrary, and so on. And again, I think just the point I want to bring forward here is that within an agent-based model, or at least the way ThinkVine does it, you're really getting very data-driven attribution. And the way we do that methodologically is we run a simulation that includes a specific type of marketing, and we see what sales results occur. And then we run another simulation, and we remove that type of marketing, and we see what sales results occur. And the difference between the first run and the second run is, in the context of all the other marketing you're doing, the amount of lift that's driven by that particular marketing activity. And so that's how accurate attribution is established. I also mentioned this a little bit. We talked about this on one of the earlier slides, but I want to kind of give you a different way to think about this idea of looking at how marketing, this year's marketing affects next year's. And I want to ask you to think about it in the context of quantifying the brand value of the advertising that you do. So if you think about what brand is, it's often reviewed in softer measures such as awareness and so on. But in the end, the value of the brand, the ideal value of translating brand value is stated in sales. And when you can have a good understanding of what the marketing in a year means, not only for the current year, but for the out years, then you're able to quantify the brand value of marketing. And without getting technical, when you're working in a regression scenario, you're estimating the future effects and the forward length of forward value of a piece of media or a type of marketing. In a agent-based model, you're getting a derived value. You're understanding from the data what the effect of this year's marketing is on next year, and by implication on your brand. We talked earlier about the idea that if you have an idea or the agency has an idea, you can run a what-if simulation. What we find, though, is that sometimes you just want to have the computer point you in the right direction, or many of our customers want to have the computer point them in the right direction. And sometimes that's to get a high-level concept and to really understand what direction to go in. And then, typically people are going to work with their agency and refine and improve that initial type of work. So what you can do in ThinkVine software is you can use a set of a family of features called Smart Mix. And those Smart Mix features are really just a way where you can establish a few key parameters. For example, you might say, in my business, I know I always want to do a certain amount of search and a certain amount of retargeting, and I want to, I'm in a car business, so I want to sponsor a race car, etc. You can establish, the percentage of your budget or the dollars of your budget that are set aside. Maybe they're set aside because you've already made commitments or a sponsorship or some sort of upfront buy. And then you can say, essentially, let the model tell me how I should spend the remainder of the money in order to get the best effect. And so that's another advantage to a really data-driven computational approach, is it's able to point you in the right direction even when you don't have a new idea to try. You just want to see how it goes. And then the other use of this, companies tend to use this in the scenarios where they're saying, well, gee, how much budget do I really need for next year in order to meet my goal? And so you're working backwards from an objective that maybe you heard from a business plan or the finance team, and you're able to test and defend the amount of budget that marketing needs in order to accomplish that, working in the most efficient way. I mentioned this one a little bit earlier. I just want to drill down a little bit on it, is the ability of agent-based modeling to simulate something new that you haven't done before, that wasn't in your history. And so the two scenarios that people use this in is, the first is trying a new tactic. So maybe I've never done mobile before. I want to know how well mobile will work for me in the context of my entire marketing mix. And then secondly, a lot of things in the digital world are piloted and then rolled out. And so what agent-based modeling is able to do, because it's working with the whole, a representation of the whole population, is it's able to tell you, to forecast for you, when I take this smaller thing and I do it in a larger scale, what's my likely return from that? What saturation effects will occur, etc. So I get a good forecast of scaling up. And a lot of marketers, given all the change and all the marketing options that are out there, find this really valuable to them. We've talked about, also touched on this really briefly, but wanted to drill down on it a little bit. Marketing, if you think about marketing as a marketer, abstract, don't talk about models for a minute. You're really thinking about, well, who am I reaching, and how frequently am I reaching them, and how effectively am I engaging and persuading them to take the type of action that I want it. And you're thinking about that relative to your ability to do that relative to your competitors' ability to do that. In its agent-based modeling, ThinkVine works exactly that way. If you are, what you're able to do is you're able to look at the potential of saying, if I do more of the right type of marketing, the odds of the consumer having preference for my brand and then purchasing my brand will go up. But if you stop in a ThinkVine model, your consumers will eventually forget about you because you're not continually advertising to them, and they will be more and more influenced over time by the advertising that the competition is doing. So you're really able to work with marketing and ask questions like, well, what if we go dark for a while? How long will it take us to recover? And that's really an advantage over regression, where typically base volume is seen as a constant. And that's often a lot of marketers say, well, we know that if we stop marketing, we won't see that same constant volume of business forever. I mentioned, I think the second or third thing I mentioned was that ThinkVine is like all agent-based modeling, is a combination of data and rules and analytics. And on the rules side, one of the things that agent-based modeling is able to do is to take market research or consumer research that you've done and build, using rules, build that into every forward simulation that you do. And what's great about that is it leverages the value of research that you do And it assures that as each different organization within a company or department within a company brings forward its plans, or if an agency brings forward its plans, that everybody is incorporating the same market research and they're using it consistently. And you're really able to feel much better that, if you're an executive or brand manager type level, you're able to say, well, I know that everybody's coming to me with apples-to-apples assumptions, and that way I can better evaluate how Plan A compares to Plan B and feel comfortable that from top to bottom it's being done in the same way. We talked about this earlier, understanding how preferences are changing over time. I'm noticing that I'm running a little bit long, so I won't drill down into this one. And I won't drill down into this one either. Again, I want to leave some time for questions. The last couple things I want to cover, last two things, are really related to software. And again, this is about specific to what ThinkVine does, but it's about explaining to you how agent-based modeling can be used to, packaged in a way that makes it really valuable to companies. So in ThinkVine's case, what we've tried to do is we've tried to design the software to be used collaboratively in the way that the real world works. So for example, it's not unusual for a company to set a budget and then pass that to the agency and say, if we want to reach these folks and we have this much money, what's the best combination of things to do that? And then there's often an interaction between the agency and the company where the agency is bringing forward ideas and suggestions and so on. And so in the case of the ThinkVine software, we can always see when there's a big meeting coming because the agency is often running lots of simulations and able to come forward to the company with the recommendations in the software. But the agency is able to work in the software without the company see it. So it's set up to work collaboratively but with security. And then the other thing that's being done in the software is you're able to quantify this recommendation. So if you're a brand manager, you're working with multiple agencies, the agencies will come with ideas, but they can also come with quantified through the model results of each. I apologize that my screen seems to have changed here, but I will wrap up actually and turn it over. So the last slide is really about keeping everyone on the same page and preserving the knowledge that's been done. So if you think about a typical planning process, there's lots of Excel spreadsheets used, and typically results are often summarized along the course of the year in one or more dashboards. And ThinkVine software is really built to store that information, all the forecasts, all the assumptions, all the plans, enable marketers to look back on that. And so we're able to preserve, get everybody on the same page and keep everybody on the same page. So now I'm going to turn it back over to the AMA for questions. Hopefully I'm able to do this at this point because the original screen seems to have dropped off. There we go.
All right, Mark. Yep, so we'll definitely move into that Q&A now. I apologize. I'm not sure what happened to the screen there, but thanks for getting us back in. We do have a number of questions lined up for you from the audience here, so we're going to move into those questions here momentarily. But just a reminder to everyone, if you still have a question for Mark, use that chat feature that you see to the left of your screen and enter your question there. We've got about 15 minutes left here, so we've got plenty of time to get to a good number of these. So again, use that chat area and get your question in. So with that, Mark, first question that we have for you here, this one coming in from Nathan, and his question is, what are the differences between agent-based modeling and predictive marketing using analytics? It seems like his comment is that the two terms seem to be very similar, so I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a bit.
I think the way I would answer that, Nathan, is to really say that predictive analytics is sort of a generic term. It doesn't apply what method you'll actually be using to do your predictions with. And so typically people think of predictive analytics as sort of the suite of things you could do in an SAS or an SPS or an SPSS or R or some other piece of software. But ThinkVine provides a different approach that can be side by side with other sorts of tools, and it's also doing predictive or forward-looking work, but it's a specific type of predictive analytics.
Okay, great, thank you. And our next question here, this one came in from our Twitter feed, and that question is, what data is required for the model?
Yeah, so we need to separate, I guess, data into three types. I'm going to try not to be too technical and be relatively quick. ThinkVine provides the first type of data. We provide all the data about the demographics of people and the media consumption that people have and so on. So we really create, if you think back to that SimCity example, we're creating the whole Sim universe in sort of in a ready to work with any brand sort of way. And then secondly, the second type of data is data that the company supplies. And so that's basically the same set of data that you would supply to a traditional regression-based mix. So you're typically looking at maybe 2 years of historical marketing plan data and 2 years of historical sales data. And I think the thing I would want to point out is in any marketing mix application, but especially in an agent-based modeling approach, you don't need to sort of back up the truck and bring all the detailed data to bear, because in the model you're working with higher level questions and not all the detail. The detail is great in that it can inform the model, but it's not really required in order to get the answers you need. And so I think sometimes people are concerned about the amount of data they have to pull together to do marketing mix modeling, and I think I would really assure people that the detailed digital data that you're often using to do A/B comparisons or next best offer, you really don't need that. It's helpful, but you really don't need that to get good marketing mix results. And then the third type of data is the data that I mentioned on one of the slides. So the data that you have that is often in a binder from a marketing research study or a pricing study or a segmentation study. The more of that type of data that you can bring to bear, the better off your agent-based model will be, and the more that it will be able to give you valuable differences than a traditional regression-based approach, because the more you know about those consumers, the more you know about where people actually buy, et cetera. That really is something that can be baked into the model and really becomes valuable information for the granular type of decisions you need.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Mark. Our next question that we've got here is this one coming from Emmanuel, who wants to know, is ABM able to provide actionable insights into long-term versus short-term trade-offs, for example, promotions versus brand advertising?
Yeah, Emmanuel, that's a question that we are often brought into specifically to answer questions like that. Many customers, especially in the retail world, as we've gone through the difficult last few years, have done a lot of couponing, and so the management of those companies is really saying, do we have to keep doing this? Will it affect our margins? Or another example is we're working with some retailers who do a lot of catalog marketing, and they're really saying, do I want to keep doing that type of work versus more brand-oriented work, and so on. So I think whether it's couponing, whether it's promotion budgets, which was your original question, whether it's any one particular type of media versus another, being able to look at and really understand the value, or the both short and long term of that, and typically in most cases people are crafting a plan over time to say, I'm going to wean myself off of promotions in a way that I feel confident will give us the sort of results Wall Street's looking for. That's a very frequent use of ThinkVine because of its time series capabilities and the accuracy of its forecasts.
All right, thank you. And our next question here, this one coming from Natasha, who wants to know if you can provide some specific example about factors that went into building a model and then the outcome or the results of that.
Sure. So one of my favorite examples is we worked with a Major League Baseball team where some of the factors that went into the model are ones that you typically wouldn't think of. It's things not only like obvious ones like weather, but who are you playing next and what's their record and where are you in the pennant race and so on. And so that's maybe the wildest example that we've got, but we really can bring in any specific external factors. Sometimes in the regression world people say, well, what are the exogenous variables? We like to say external factors because there's lots of different things that can be brought to bear. Another good example would be we work with a large financial services company whose the state of the economy and where the Dow is and so forth are really important factors for them. And you ask for results. So that particular company, we were able to abstract. They were looking at switching from a traditional media-heavy approach to a more digital-oriented approach. And we were able to take out those factors and to be able to say the historical work they've done in print versus more recent testing they've done of digital. If we scale up digital, if we take it from sort of 10 to 20% of the mix to 70 or 80% of the mix, what are the results that we'll achieve and how do we do that successfully over time? And in that particular company's case, they went out with sort of a 6-month test. In their case, they achieved, if I remember correctly, either 4 or 5% increase in enrollments of the right sorts of people, meaning for them, they're looking for a certain type of, certain level of household income and so forth. So they drove, by switching out of those traditional ways into digital, they drove the change that they wanted, the growth that they wanted, and a change in the right sorts of consumers. And then based on that successful 6-month, they did a second 6-month with a more shift to digital. We got about that same, roughly the same percentage, and then now they're in a new phase where they're even further to digital, and we actually haven't seen their results from last year yet. But that's an example of how a company worked through a change, and the management of the company got comfortable with the idea of change because they saw how accurate the model was able to predict, and they were able to go further down a path and feel good about the results that they could expect from it.
All right, and it looks like we've got time for one more question here. So this one, wondering how long it takes before you can use the model and really start seeing the results.
Yeah, so that's a very smart question. I give that person a lot of credit. Typically, at the beginning, when we work with a customer, we will say that it will take around 3 months to get the model up and running, get the marketplace up and running and fully tuned, and to give you both historical insights into what has and hasn't worked, as well as to play out the scenarios that are of interest to you as a company. If I break down those 3 months, a good chunk of the time is used in stakeholder interviews and working with folks in the company to understand what they're looking for, what sort of plans they want to see tested, et cetera. And simultaneously, data collection is happening, and data collection and validation. So we're getting those marketing research studies, we're getting those historical marketing reports, et cetera. We have seen companies go through that really quickly in just a matter of weeks. More typically, companies will take roughly a month to go through that. And so the remaining time between data being ready and the marketplace being rolled out with forward-looking information, is pretty much that sort of 6 to 8 weeks all the time. So that's a timeline for people getting going. And then once they're up and going, the cadence of what we call variance analysis. Did the model predict accurately versus the actuals you received? What additional changes should you make, etc. Most companies work either on a monthly or quarterly cycle because the large companies that we work with, they are getting digital results faster than that, but they're typically getting television results or print results on a monthly or slower cycle.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. I think a lot of people found this helpful, got some good comments coming in, so I appreciate you being with us today and all the time you put into putting this together.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to do this.
Just a quick reminder as we wind up today's webcast, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording the full presentation, so look for that coming your way via email very soon. For those of you that were able to join us on Twitter today, we appreciate your involvement there. If you were not able to join, you can still go and engage in that conversation later. Again, reminder, the hashtag for today was ABM Webcast, so go and engage with the other participants there. So in closing, I'd like to extend a big thank you to ThinkVine for sponsoring today's webcast, as well as to ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we use. And if you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. Last but not least, of course, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for taking an hour from your busy day to spend with us. We hope you found this information helpful, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon on another AMA Thought Leader webcast. That does end our presentation for today. Thanks so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day.